from the Ticats Audio Network, this is the CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil.
Two 10-win teams, but who's numero uno? Are the Elks and Stamps contenders or pretenders? Austin Mack delivers a smack and is dismissed, plus an elite of talented tailbacks. Who would you draft first on your team? This is the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Thank you so much for lining up with us as you do week after week. On today's podcast, two familiar faces and one rookie. First, he describes himself as the least photogenic human in the nation. From Sportsnet 960 in Calgary, I see you smiling there, Pat Steinburg. Great to see you.
You too, Bubs. Good to be here, boys.
He's the sci-fi superhero geek that rides shotgun alongside Morley Scott on the Elks broadcast on 630 CHED in Edmonton. Chedmonton. Hey, thanks for checking in, Dave Campbell.
No problem, Bubs. And we've heard that before. A lot of people say Chedmonton, so it's all good, man.
Right on. Hey, and this Hall of Fame gunslinger played, coached, and broadcast a three-down game at a high level. Plus, he certainly knows how to smoke up a fine rack of ribs on the BBQ. Matt Dunnigan, so happy to have you.
Hey, Bubs. It's good to be on. I guess I'm the rookie?
Yes, you are the rookie.
All right. I'll take that.
Right on. Okay, guys, let's get to business quickly here. As we hit the final third of the season, the best team in the CFL, Matt Dunnigan, is
Toronto Argonauts. Yeah, at 10-1, you know, I just think that the record speaks for itself, and I know that they hadn't played each other yet, but on September 29th, Winnipeg may have something to say about that. And you know, it's just Toronto's been more consistent right now, and it's mind-boggling to see a young quarterback like Chad Kelly figure it out so quickly. And, you know, when you start breaking it down, defensively and positions and things of that nature, you know, that's a completely different conversation. But as a whole right now, I'd say the Toronto Argonauts, and because many reasons. But I can't wait for the 29th, fellas. That's going to be a heck of a football game, possibly a prelude to the Grey Cup here in Hamilton.
Dave Campbell, your thoughts are best team.
It's an interesting debate. I'm kind of with Matt. I think offense, defense, special teams, there's been no team more consistent, more explosive. They're so good, and they can put a ton of points on you. They can shut you down. Javon Leake has been outstanding. The thing with the Bombers, though, and I agree with Matt, I mean, their meeting is going to tell a lot. Winnipeg has this freaky ability. If you tick them off, they have, and this is hard to do in football. If you disrespect them, if they feel that you've wronged them in some way, or they want to prove a point, they seem to be the best team in the league to prove the point. And just ask the BC Lions, just ask the
Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Yeah, you could go on there. It seems like we lost him. We lost him with his internet. He'll come back. Pat, and I see where he's going with this. They used to have a saying back in the day in the boxing ring that you never fought Joe Louis twice because he'd always snip you on the second time. Is that the same way you feel about Zach Caleros and his boys?
Well, I mean, look, Winnipeg's the best team in the West Division. It's a shame we haven't seen Winnipeg and Toronto play as of yet, and it's a shame we're only going to get to see it once. But I'll echo the chorus, because what Chad Kelly has done and what he's done in year one has been outstanding. And I don't know how you can go against Toronto, knowing that they are the defending champs. And the last time they played Winnipeg, they beat them in the most important game of 2022. And there are so many different things that you can point to and give check marks to Toronto, whether it be they're 10-1, guys. They've allowed less than a sack a game. They're 10 sacks in 11 games. Like, that offensive line is out of their mind. Their turnover ratio is out of their mind. That what Corey Mace has got that defense doing, that line, that group of linebackers. They've got, positionally some of the best players in the defensive backfield in the league. I just don't know how you can go against Toronto. And you know what? If Winnipeg ends up beating them at the end of October, it might still be Toronto because that's how good this group has been. So, yeah, it's to me, it's Toronto and Winnipeg, but knowing that they're the champs and knowing how good they've been, I got to give the nod to the Argos as well.
Matt, I'm going to ask you to dig down deep here. If you look at the Argonauts, what's their weakness?
With Haggerty going down, you throw up a red flag. Is Beatty going to be able to do it both? And it's like, oh man, he can, and he can cover too. He proved that last week. Weakness, I would say maybe possibly playing down to their opponent's level. I think sometimes they just do enough, right? And that's a dangerous throttle to mess around with. And I think championship football teams last year, they had to continue to take it 1 week at a time, like everybody's mantra is across the league. And to me, they were pushing themselves, and they're rolling into becoming that football team as opposed to just a group of excellent football players. They melded together at the right time. They found a way to get it done, and thanks to Chad Kelly and some amazing play by Robbie Smith. And then this year, I think that they've been outstanding, and that's why we've all chosen them as the best team in the CFL to this point. But I think if there was a weakness, and their kryptonite is themselves and playing down to their opponent and just playing with that throttle of just doing enough to win, I think they got to learn to bury teams consistently, and I think that's probably the only improvement I could see with the Toronto Argonauts.
Pat, do you think lurking in the background, Coach O'Shea and the Bombers love it this way? They love it that we've said the Argos are the best team.
Yeah, I absolutely, because even going into the Labor Day rematch on Saturday, and all of the talk surrounding the Bombers and how they got beat by Sask on Labor Day weekend, there was a lot of talk. I was just watching the panel leading up to the game, a lot of talk about how once again there's those question marks about are things starting to pass the Bombers by? Or, are we talking about a group that still good but not as good as they were? And then what did they do? They went out and showed us how good they were in the first half and then cruised to victory over Sask and again emphatically put that conversation to rest. So, yeah, I think that this team thrives on people wondering if they're still the elite group, and I think that they'll continue to thrive on it. And I bet you that that's going to be one of the big-time storylines going into that game when they end up facing Toronto in a month and a half. So, yeah, I do think they like it. I think that Coach O'Shea and some of those vets will take any of the bulletin board material they can get. And I honestly would bet against Winnipeg at your own peril, but with all that Toronto's done and knowing that they're your defending champion, I still give them just the slight nod as of right now.
But Pat, isn't that true with any football team? Just taking whatever source of motivation, whether it's the way somebody walks, whether it's the way somebody dresses, obviously what somebody said, whether it's you, myself, whether it's another ball player of an opposing team. That's the way players and athletes are made up. They're just looking for motivation, and this is what creates dialogue. This is what creates content across the league is our opinions, because we're supposed to be experts, on these subjects, and it creates that dialogue which these guys feed off of. And so anything we say, it's going to be used against us or in a positive way for somebody else's motivation. And to me, it's just the nature of the beast.
Dave, we were kind of saying and discussing the fact that the Winnipeg Bombers love it this way. They love the fact that we're drooling over the Argonauts.
They do. And they can't wait till they can prove everyone wrong and shove it down everyone's throat. I mean, that's just the way they operate. They feel disrespected. They feel that, you look at an example. Week 3, they get pounded by the BC Lions. So what do? We're going to take that receipt, we're going to put it in our pocket, and we'll see them again later. And then they pound them when they meet again. And then the game, Labor Day, their Labor Day game in Saskatchewan, we know what happened with Zach Collaros and Pete Robertson. They're upset. Mike O'Shea's upset. Zach Caleros is upset. When Pete Robertson gets suspended, but they go, well, now they're all jumping around, talking about how great they are. Well, you're coming to our house now for the Banjo Bowl, and we got a point to make. And again, it's very hard for a football team to do this because in football it's hard to win, and it's hard to dictate the way you want to play. And the Bombers, if they're pissed off, you're in trouble, And, I mean, Matt, you've played many of Battle of Albertas, and you've played many rivalry games over your career. You're mad, they're mad. It's hard to dictate what you want to do on the football field, but the Bombers, and let's face it, the Riders, there's some issues there, but the Bombers have a way of putting the foot on your throat and just pressing down on it.
Yeah, I think that's experience, Dave. Yeah, I think that's experience, and I think that's, and you hear Coach O'Shea, in his comments about, just kind of sloughing those things off. He's like, we'll see. We're not changing. We are who we are. Our boys, whether we're down or whether we're up, are going to play the same. And to me, that's experience, confidence, and trust in your. And people talk about the word trust all the time within organizations, from top to bottom, from ownership down into the coaches, into the players, and back up. And it's got to be there. And it is with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in spades, more so than most teams across the league. And I think that's what we see on the weekends when they're able to rebound like that and trust the process that they talk about.
One last thing on this question here, guys, and I'll throw it to you, Matt. Here, I was amazed at what I saw. I mean, you played with some high-powered teams and offenses and offensive players, receivers, running backs. Have you ever seen anyone score on 6 straight possessions like that?
I can't remember what happened yesterday. But it is a wonderful thing to watch football, this game, with all the nuances come together so cleanly and consistently. And I'm not saying make the best group of receivers, or talent, but combined and collectively, what Buck Pierce has got that football team doing is and I say Buck Pierce offensively is what we're speaking here, and the consistency there and the high level of execution. It's magic, and together they're tough when they're hitting like that, and they're dictating being offensively and make defenses defend. It's magical to watch, and that's the way the game's supposed to be played.
This next issue here, I'm so happy that we have 2 men representing both markets here.
Right.
Pat, look at Pat. He can't wait to bust out on this one. Also, you start. The best team in Alberta is?
Man, it's a fun one because our CFL.ca expert picks. I ended up choosing Calgary. I thought Calgary was in a good spot coming off the Labor Day comeback. Going into Edmonton, I thought to myself, you know what? That's a demoralizing loss for Edmonton with an opportunity in Calgary to win. I thought, you know what? Calgary's in a good spot to sweep the rematch, and credit to Trey Ford, credit to the Elks and that offense and what they were able to do in the fourth quarter to come back. And I was the only guy to pick Calgary, and credit to the Elks social media for not letting me forget it. And I think it is really close. I really do. I mean, Edmonton has found something with the guy that it's just so clear is going to be the guy for the rest of the season. And I really honestly hope for the long term that Trey Ford is the guy, because I don't know if right now there's a more exciting player to watch on any given snap in the CFL. He's that fun to watch right now. But just based solely on the record and how close these two teams were on Labor Day in the rematch, I will go slight Calgary. But you know what? It has less to do with being in the market. It has less to do with being here in Calgary and more to do with, you know what? Those two teams were really close in those two games. Calgary engineered the comeback at home. Then Edmonton engineered the comeback at home. I'll go solely on record, the Stampeders. But it's slight. I'd like to see them play once more, and both teams have outside playoff shots right now, Dave. So I know that you're even closer to your team there, but I think it's real close. And Had you asked me 3 or 4 weeks ago, it would have been a whole lot easier to go Calgary. But that Elks team has closed the gap. There's no doubt.
Dave, go Wild.
Well, I would have to give the slight edge to Calgary, but Trey Ford, and he is closing the gap big time. He's excitement. You got to give Jarius Jackson credit, because when the OC job was given to him and was stripped from Stephen McAdoo and given to Jarius Jackson, I think he really pushed for a change at quarterback. And not that he didn't like Taylor Cornelius, but he knew Taylor Cornelius lost his confidence. We need to give Trey Ford or Jarrett Dagey a chance, and it's been Trey Ford for the last 5 games, so I got to give Jarius Jackson a ton of credit. But, I look at the Stampeders, and they're the second youngest team in the league, if I'm correct, so I give them a slight edge on experience. But I'd have to say it's Calgary, just a little bit of an edge. But, it's funny, Greg Peterson, who does the color on Stampeder games, he said both teams, Edmonton and Calgary, are better than their record. And they're underrated, and they're going to win some games. But, both teams have found ways to lose in very interesting ways, and almost the exact same script from Labor Day to the rematch, and they just flipped. It's like it was the invasion of the body snatchers or something like that. They just switched bodies, and it's like, okay, so Monday it was Calgary with the comeback, and Saturday it was Edmonton. But I will give the slight edge to Calgary, but Trey Ford.
To our neutral observer, your thoughts, Matt?
I don't know if I'm neutral, but yeah, I have to be.
Better not be.
Right? I have to be. But yeah, I've covered Edmonton the last 3 out of 4 weeks, and the 3 games that I've done color, they've won those 3 football games. And so, I've seen the best of the Edmonton Elks this year. And, note to Paul Graham, to the league, to the Edmonton Elks, you might want to rethink the schedule down the road and just put me on all the color games if you're an Elks fan, because I feel like I'm a lucky rabbit's foot for this football team. But when I look at it, you break it down. You break it down in different sections. And, if you look at the running game and you just look at what, if everybody's healthy, you've got Mills, you've got Kadeem Carey, and Levante Bellamy showed some talent the other night, and then you look at what happens in Edmonton, and you got Kevin Brown and Brooks. I think has been a breath of fresh air as well, much like Kevin was last year, bursting on the scene. And then you throw in a Trey Ford with that running game, and it surpasses the Calgary Stampeders and their 3-headed monster in the backfield. Hey, Jake Mayer's got enough mobility to put pressure on defenses. He showed that 2 weeks ago in a 5-yard touchdown when they needed it. And he reminds me a bit of Danny Mack. He's going to slow you to death, but you're not going to expect it. He's going to get in there when it counts, and that's exactly what Jake Mayer did a couple weeks ago. But you start bringing it down like that, what they bring to the table. In certain positions, you go to the receiver position. I'm taking the Elks, and I know that Mark Michelle and the addition of Markeith Ambles has been huge and brings some toughness. And Bagleton arguably has been one of the best receivers in the Canadian Football League. But I'll take Lewis, Dunbar, Mitchell, and Moore all day long. As far as if I'm walking to a huddle, I'm going with that huddle. Defensively, I think I think the Elks obviously been rotating a lot of people at Sam linebacker, much like Calgary has. Secondary, I think it's a wash because of just injuries as well in the mix and match that's been going on all season. Offensive line, boy, that's a toss up as well. So when it comes down to gut. And what I've seen over the last 3 weeks and the talent that Chris Jones has put on the football field that is coming together. And you talk about Jarius Jackson, you got to throw in some Tommy Dennison. He's been there for about 4 weeks now. And I think Tommy's been a positive influence on the offensive side of the ball for young quarterbacks to see it clearly pre-snap, to understand what they're looking at based on numbers alone. It's not a complicated game, fellas. There's 4 over here and there's 3 over there. We're going to run to the 3 side. It's pretty simple. And Tommy breaks it down for him that way. Jarius and Coach Jones have given him an opportunity to be an influencer there. I think he's done a marvelous job along with Jarius. I hate it for Taylor Cornelius because he got caught up in the mix with McAdoo and that offense that they were running. And but moving forward, I got to say the Edmonton Elks. I've seen them. I know what they bring to the table. They're starting to believe, and belief is a big thing with a football team that's talented. And they're a talented group. They just needed some of that belief, and they have it now in Trey Ford.
Dave, we were all over Chris Jones' defense and their inability to come up and make big plays, turnovers, exceptions like that for a lot of the season. But when you add a little stability at offense, now we're starting to see a defense that is really making plays. Is that what you're seeing?
Well, I think over the last 5 games, they're 3-2. They've won 3 of their last 4. They're playing more complementary football, which you need in this game. And I think you didn't see that hardly at all. I think what
3, 2, 1 on Dave. Pat, to you.
Well, I'll pick up what Davey was saying because I think that there's way more to like about some of the playmakers on defense for Edmonton that maybe we necessarily gave them credit for when they had that 0-9 start. And as Dave said, much like Calgary, the Elks have found ways to lose in pretty spectacular fashion this year, and now have figured out how to start turning those into wins. But I don't know if Niles Morgan gets the type of respect he deserves as one of the more mobile and just reliable linebackers in the CFL. And what we saw from Serezna in the Labor Day rematch and the Labor Day game, the guy is as disruptive as it gets in the interior of a defensive line. So, I don't think that we gave some of these playmakers the type of credit that maybe they deserve because they were off to such a poor start. And it was so spectacular, the home record and all of the narrative that went along with the 0-9 beginning. And now they've won some games, and now we're talking about an exciting player like Trey Ford. They've closed the gap because they're now allowing some of their talent to take center stage. And so, you've got a guy like Ford who comes in and gives you a dynamic ability on every snap, and you think to yourself, okay, this is a group that can convert on 2nd and 8, and this is a group that you feel like maybe can keep some drives going, and that gives some of their playmakers on defense a whole lot more opportunity. So I give them a lot of credit for how they've turned it around. And Matty, you sure do wonder what it would have looked like, and this is no knock on Taylor Cornelius, but what it would have looked like if a week or 2 prior they would have given the ball to Trey.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Pat, because I had a long conversation with Coach Jones, and I asked a direct question, what took so long for Trey to get to the front of the line? And he had a really good explanation. And some of it I can go into, some of it I can share, and some of it I can't. But I can say that the things that I feel like I can share is during preseason, you're trying to be that guy that stays in the pocket and controls the offense from there. That's not Trey Ford. I think coaches want to see a quarterback operate from between the tackles and execute the offense and get the ball out with timing and go through the progressions and make the right reads consistently and make good choices. Trey Ford, his game's a little bit different right now, as is Dustin Crumbs. They're not Taylor Powell. Taylor Powell was going to structure everything from the pocket for the most part, and he's learning that, hey, I do have the ability to run and put pressure on defenses. So it's kind of reverse what we're seeing in Edmonton with Trey Ford. But Trey Ford, there were some other things going on, and plus Taylor Cornelius was spinning the ball incredibly well during training camp and separated from everybody else. And then, things happen throughout the course of the season, and it plays out the way it does, and the Trey Ford gets a chance to go out there and compete. And he's not trying to fit that mold of just staying in the pocket, and he's out there competing. And I think that's what we're seeing now is the true Trey Ford coming out in his playmaker ability, how he can pressure defenses. But I thought that was interesting, Pat, and I think that, people go, why? Well, there's a lot of reasons why. Some I can't go into, some I shared with you. But I really believe that, things happen for a reason, and they are where they are. And 8-10 is not bad. That's what you got to think if you're an Elk fan, or a football player on that team is, hey, we can, one week at a time, increments, win the day, win the play, all that, and things will work out the way they're supposed to if we put our best foot forward. So I think Trey Ford has certainly been a breath of fresh air. And again, I will say this, fellas. Sitting down and looking at this league right now and looking at all our young, talented quarterbacks, I'm excited. I'm excited about our future. It was just 3 or 4 weeks ago, people were just, it's just the metrics and everything's wrong and offenses suck and there's too many sacks happening, touchdown interception ratio is off the chart or not. And I just think that's part of the process. But there's so much talent that's in front of our eyes right now across the board. It's exciting to me.
Matt, there's no doubt about it that in Steeltown, a lot of that kind of whining and complaining, and I'm part of it too in the Hamilton media, just not happy with the way Taylor Powell started out. I mean, it's been tough. No Matthew Schultz, no Bo Levi Mitchell when the expectation was Bo Levi Mitchell. Taylor Powell, all of a sudden, a 300-yard game in the nation's capital last week. What are you seeing from this kid?
He's the deal. He's the real deal. He's a young Bo Levi Mitchell. People get upset because we start saying stuff like Trey Ford reminds us of Damon Allen and Doug Flutie. It's not that they put up those numbers. He's going to put up those numbers. No, there's aspects of the game that remind you of these great players. Now, he's got to put 14, 15, in Damon's case, 23 years together in order to get to that level. But it's about what we're seeing. And I see in Taylor Powell a young gunslinger, much like Bo Levi Mitchell, who's got a lot of confidence, who's a student of the game, can make every throw on the field, and he's learning that, hey, my mobility is enough to put pressure on defenses. I love this kid. You even asked Bo Levi Mitchell. He said, yeah, he's the real deal. So that's not my opinion. That's Bo Levi's opinion, a teammate of his who's in the room with him every day. He knows what he's getting in Taylor Powell, and you're getting a very fine young quarterback that Scott Milinovich is really molding into a guy I think is going to be here for a long time.
Pat, there's no doubt that the learning process is real tough. Would you put Taylor Powell in that category of the good young quarterbacks in this league?
Yeah, I remember that first game that he started, and I remember watching and saying to myself, there's some real swagger with this. And it's funny, Matt brings up Bo Levi Mitchell and being in this market. I remember this third string quarterback in the early 2010s that rolled in from Katy, Texas, and you're saying this third stringer's got some real swagger. I'm really curious as to what Bo Levi Mitchell is capable of doing. And then when he got his opportunities, he looked good, and he worked his way into a starter and kind of established himself as the preeminent pocket passer in the CFL, and he doesn't run the ball a lot. He and when he was at his best, he stood in there and he slung it. And that's exactly what we're seeing with Taylor Powell. He's a guy who stands back there, and I love watching that guy sling the football because he can bomb it. And so the more that he hones in some of the decision making, I think the better it'll be. But that, as we know, it just comes with chair time. It just comes with reps and important reps, like what he's going to get here down the stretch for a Hamilton team that's got home field in the playoffs still very much on their mind. So I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing from Taylor Powell, and I know that Bo Levi was the plan. And when you pay the type of money that they're paying Bo Levi right now, you're expecting him to be the guy, but you can't control how healthy a guy is. You can't control some of that stuff that is completely in Bo's case is not something that's really been part of his narrative up until the last couple of years. So, the fact that Matt Schultz goes down so quickly afterwards, and here's this young Taylor Powell who's been able to step in and steady the ship. I'm excited to see more because he's got some swagger, and I think he's starting to feel more and more confident back there for Hamilton. And the more that they're playing meaningful games, I think the better this guy's going to get. I've really enjoyed from afar, and I know you're in that market, Bubs, but I from afar, I've really enjoyed watching him.
Let's stay in the Eastern Division, and in that much anticipated Alouettes and Argonauts clash, Austin Mack gets in, certainly one of the best receivers we've seen in the league this year. Pat gets involved in a little pushing and shoving match, throws a smack to a helmet of an Argonaut player. He's disqualified. Did you feel that play was fair, or his disqualification? Was it fair or foul?
Well, I think that it's such a and look, I've never played the game at a high level compared to the other guy who's going to chime in. But I mean, I know that emotions are a part of it, and emotions are part of why we love this sport at the highest level. We have seen less not get a disqualification, but in the moment, it was, if I'm on the field, if I'm watching that as an official and I see that, I can understand throwing the flag and saying, no, that's got to go. And so it was, for me, on the borderline. We have seen worse not get DQs and only go for 15 yards or something like that. But we've also seen things similar that have gotten that rough play DQ. So I didn't have a problem with it. I kind of came away from it saying, it's too bad, because I really love watching Austin Mack play. He's been one of the revelations of 2023. But I understood it. I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was one of those plays that if you put yourself on the borderline like that, sometimes it's going to go against you like that, and it did. I don't know if it would have really mattered in the end with how dialed the Argos were that game. But yeah, I understood it, even though I think we've seen worse that hasn't gone for disqualification at different times before.
Matt, you come from the old school. I mean, that kind of stuff, at least I watch your career, that kind of stuff happened on the regular. Was that an overreaction, that call?
No. It's you throw a punch in this league, it's not part of the game. It's violent enough, and it's clearly states in the rules, you're going to be DQ'd. And what was surprising was it happened so early in the contest. It was like, wow, that's an early exit. Then you go back to last week's game, Calgary at Edmonton. Reggie Bagleton does the same thing, and he doesn't get ejected. And I'm like, all right, as a commentator, as a fan, an ex-ball player, I'm throwing my hat down, and I'm disgusted because I'm confused now. And it's got to be really clear cut. And I'll say this. The first game of the season, I saw Jake Mayer get a hand laid on the side of his face, and it pulled his neck this way. Now, it's discretionary up to the officials whether that was a significant blow to the head or not, but it was a blow to the head. And they did make that call, and it was challenged, and they didn't overturn it. And I said, well, they're setting the precedent for inconsistencies, and that was week one. And you can't have that. If it's in the rule books, you got to call it to the letter of the law as best you can and have consistencies across the league, because I don't think it's good. Everybody says, well, any talk, whether it's negative or not, is good talk. No, it's not. We need to be consistent across the board. And Reggie should have been tossed in that ball game because Austin was tossed as he should have been. What happened with 2 weeks ago in Saskatchewan, that was like, oh my God, that was violent, and that was out of nowhere. But that's an easy call. But I would just like to see more consistency there, and I thought that it was a mishap there in the Edmonton-Calgary game that wasn't called, but I was perfectly fine with what I saw with Austin Mack being tossed.
Pat, it's crazy. I mean, just looking at it on the game on the broad scope is the fact that, And I mean, I guess it's understandable, but the Owls went in the tank from that moment on.
They did, and I mean, look, the way that things were going, and the way that I think Toronto was dialed in that game, I'm not sure that Austin Mack staying in would have made too much of a difference in the long run. Now, I get it. He is one of the receivers in the league this year, and has, as I said, turned into one of the real awesome stories. So, I do think it made a difference, but I don't know how much in the long run it would have made the ultimate difference. I will say, to Matt's point, I agree. In a bubble, I had no problem with Austin Mack getting tossed. I had no problem with them making that decision. From a big picture standpoint, I think that some consistency would be really good from a fan standpoint, to know exactly what you're talking about. Say, okay, if you're going to throw a punch, you're gone regardless. If you're making post play contact to another player's head like that, it's an automatic disqualification every time. That I think would go a long way, so that you're calling a game, you're watching a game, okay, they're throwing a flag, that'll be 25 and a DQ or whatever. Like that would be really helpful, I think, from an observer's standpoint.
Yeah, from a coach's perspective as well, from a player's perspective, and now you don't know. I'm going to go ahead and throw this punch because Reggie to get tossed, maybe I can get away with this too. But, you got to teach your players the rules of the game and have your own system to enforce those. And it makes it tough on everybody, from fans to the coaches to the players, because you're scratching your head but you can't be selfish in those situations. And that's what, coaches are always talking about is, don't do anything after the whistles, don't respond. And, oftentimes it's difficult because we know that tempers flare. It's a heated rivalry. There's money on the line. There's playoff implications. All these things add up. But consistency is the best. And I was speaking to 4 officials this morning, fellas, and they were talking about that. Matty, what did you think about that call? And I said I had no problem with it. I said, but I have a problem with the non-call that happened in the Edmonton-Calgary game. And they were saying, exactly. So, they're not perfect. They know it. There's like 4 different guys in the command center, that rotate. And that's, to me, needs to be looked at. Okay? How many guys should there be? Should there be 4 opinions from week to week or game to game? No, I think there should be 1 or 2. Narrow that down and become more consistent there. And I know that the league is working on that as well.
Matt, can I come right back at you? And you mentioned the word coach. You've been in those situations as a player where, sometimes things get overheated. We're in a real interesting situation where these 2 teams play each other this week. If you're Jason Moss, do you have to have a conversation with your young wide receiver, or does he know it already as a player?
No, I don't think that's Austin Mack. I don't think that's his makeup. I think he's lost it. And you got to be able to have control. I mean, I heard Adam Bighill speak about this, and he says, I've been playing this game a long time. You got to be able to control your emotions. And it just got away from Austin Mack. I don't think you have to say anything to him. I think being tossed and the disappointment he had, not being able to compete with his teammates and losing that game the way they did, I think that speaks volumes. But I would definitely have him in my office as a GM head coach and set him down and say, hey, let me hear your viewpoint, and just let him speak and just make sure we're on the same page. But I would be really surprised if Austin Mack, said I'd do it again. I just don't think that that's in his DNA, and it's not who he is. He's a special football player that we're lucky to have in this league.
Guys, the running back position has been dominated by one man. I mean, I have to check again after the CFL stats have been a little tough this year. But I believe he's leading the league in rushing by over 300 yards. That's by my last check. Pat, who's the best running back in the CFL right now?
Yeah, it's more than 300 yards, and I think that there are some really, really good backs in this league. I mean, I take a look at what Jamal Morrow did and the way they used him as a receiver in the Labor Day game when Sask upsets Winnipeg. I thought that was really impressive to see. And I thought that's in a game where you're not getting much traction on the ground. Yeah, use a talented guy like Morrow and split him out a little more as a receiver. That worked. I think James Butler's had some great games. I think Kadeem Carey, when he's healthy, is as dynamic as it gets, and he's coming off his most productive game of the season. But guys, I mean, it's not close. In fact, the only thing that's close is which teammate or is his teammate going to overtake him for most outstanding Canadian? Like, is it going to be Nick Dembski or Brady Oliveira for MOC this year? That's how good Brady's been, and I think you can make. I think it was Glenn Suter who was making the case in week 14 for. I think you got to put Brady Oliveira in the most outstanding player conversation right now with how consistent he's been with what he's meant to that offense. Like, we're talking about multiple 100-yard games. I think we're at 5 or 6 triple-digit games now for Oliveira. He's getting in the end zone. We know that, like, he's honestly a clone of his mentor. He really is. Those two Oak Park guys, like that. It has been impressive to see how Brady Oliveira has followed in the footsteps of Andrew Harris, and the way that Brady can catch the ball to the backfield, the way that he can just run it as a traditional back. It's not close this year. Brady Oliveira has what he's done from 1,000-yard season last year to this year, already at 1,100 plus yards, and could be talking about one of the best rushing seasons we've seen in close to a decade. I don't know how you can go any other way than Brady Oliveira.
To the Argonaut fans that are saying that that Oliveira's success is all the O-line and that it's AJ Alette. Matt, what are you saying about that? I guess if you're going to be a good running back, you got to have an unbelievable front five to be running behind.
Yeah. And Zach's mobile and Chad's mobile. I think that helps those running backs, because you have to be contained conscious when you're running RPOs and ISO reads and with the single back and I formation. And to me, that helps with those two quarterbacks being mobile and just enough to put pressure on defenses. We just can't go all out and squeeze a run. But AJ and Andrew, those guys have been pretty special this year. It is to me, it's a one-man attack in Winnipeg, and he's been carrying the load, and it's been pretty impressive. And I'll just, just for being politically correct, I'll throw in some other guys' names too, and Taekwon Mizell in BC and Devontae Williams in Ottawa. Devontae has elevated his game tremendously from last year, where he was hunting and pecking in holes. This guy is slashing this year. He understands. He's made the adjustments, and I really think that Dustin Crum has helped that running game for the Red Blacks be more consistent, and now you're seeing his explosiveness. So we're blessed right now across the league to have incredible talent at the running back position. And in fact, I really believe that it's been almost the year of the running back, and it's just been really special. But yeah, I'm going to go with Brady Oliveira. I just think that he's been a one-man show. He really hadn't been able to tag team too much. I think I know Johnny Augustine has been there spot duty, but really when it comes to crunch time, you only know one guy's getting the football, and that's number 20.
Pat, it's crazy because in the National Football League, we're seeing a situation where the running back has kind of become secondary. But in the 3-down game, it's crucial. And Matt's right. Every team's got a quality back that can contribute, not only running behind the tackle and guard, but getting downfield and catching screen passes as well, too.
No doubt. And, we haven't even mentioned Kevin Brown, who currently sits second in rushing right now. And he's had himself a really good season. It's been, and I think a healthy Kadeem Carey, is way closer to the top of the rushing table as well. And it's too bad that he's had his injury issues this year. Yeah, we're talking about a real golden age at the position, and we know how predicated on the pass game and a 3-down game this league can be. But when you can have somebody, when you've got O-lines that can open up holes like Winnipeg and Toronto's are, and I think over the last 5 or 6 games we're starting to realize that Edmonton offensive line. You take a look at some of those metrics from Pro Football Focus and what that Edmonton O-line has done the last month and a bit. It's been really impressive as well. When you've got O-lines like that, and you've got backs as talented as that you can all of a sudden be looking at 2nd and 3 and give yourself manageable second downs over and over and over again, you're in a really good spot. So there's some offensive coordinators right now who are very, very blessed to have some different play calling options in front of them because of how talented some of these backs are.
Hey, Bubs, it's crazy. We're talking about running backs, and not once have we mentioned a guy that, in my opinion, people were talking about a lot in preseason, and it's William Stanback. And you know, it's like
he's the old man.
It's crazy, and you know, he's worked through some tough times in Montreal this year, but he's shown some explosiveness, and we know he's powerful. And you know, it took us 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes to mention his name, and to me, I think that just bodes well, just how well everybody is playing right now, and the focus, and because you have to be able to run the football. Look, Edmonton for decades controlled the line of scrimmage, led the league in rushing. I know, I was there. That was our focus, and we pounded it. And Winnipeg, they're pounding it. Calgary, they're pounding it. These teams know the benefit in 2-down football to be able to run it and run it when they know you're going to run it. And the teams have that capability across the board. It's been really exciting as far as that rushing attack goes this year.
Looking at the schedule that's coming ahead, guys, pretty exceptional and should be pretty exciting. Argos at Alouettes. Elks at Riders. That should be fun. Bombers at Tiger Cats, which has been interesting over the years when Winnipeg comes to Steeltown, and then the Red Blacks at Lions as they come off their bye week. Pat Steinburg, your game of the week is?
Cool. It's a fun one. I really like the Winnipeg-Hamilton game, but you know what? With how Sask took it on the chin in the Labor Day rematch, and with the way Edmonton is playing right now, the way Trey Ford is playing right now, and the desperate spot that, Sask is in a little bit of no man's land. I don't know if their situation is as desperate as Edmonton's is, because Edmonton is in a spot where they've honestly, as Matt said earlier, like 8 and 10, they got to be looking at winning out right now. But I think that game's got a lot of promise, because you know how much that loss to Winnipeg smarted for the Riders, and I just love watching Trey Ford play right now, and to see him go into that Hornets nest at Mosaic and get that opportunity to play in front of that crowd, I'm looking forward to it. So I'll go Edmonton Sask, because the implications are big for Edmonton, and I'm curious to see how this Riders team bounces back after a game that they just want to burn the tape and forget ever happened, use it as a little bit of motivation, and then just go back and play the good fundamental football they've been playing for 3 or 4 weeks prior to what we saw over the weekend.
Matt, I don't know if are you on the desk this week, or are you in the
I'm in Montreal for that football game, and then we're in Hamilton for a doubleheader at the park as a panel. So, yeah, I get to see 3 of the 4 games up close and personal. Yeah, I like what you said, Pat, about the Elks and the Riders, but I'm going to take a different twist on this. I'm going to go Argos and Owls, and I'm going to say it's extremely important, not only for the Owls, because it's a divisional game and they got to make up some ground against the Argos, but I'm going to say for the Argos is the reason why I think it's so important and the big game of the week, because they had 3 other byes in the first 10 weeks of the season. They got to play out, and 10 weeks in a row they got to play, and if they want to have a chance to and an opportunity and a luxury to sit players and get healthy towards the end of the season and put themselves in that position to do so, then they've got to win now. And the urgency is defeat your opponent, win the day. And you talk to Wint McManus, and it's like 1-0 this week, 1-0 this week. And when that guy says 1-0 this week, you better pay attention because, he brings it, and I wouldn't want to cross him. But I love the mentality. It's across the league. I get it. But this is extremely important for the Argos. Maybe not so much this week, but if you fast forward 3 or 4 weeks down the road and they're playing against Winnipeg, and now it comes up to that game being a must-win, good luck with that. So you got to take care of business now, bury your opponent, put yourself in a good, enviable position down the road so you can have those choices and that luxury of maybe getting healthy towards the playoff run, because they don't have that opportunity to have a bye week anymore. That's why I'm going that pick.
And the last time Toronto was in Montreal, Kelly and Fajardo put on just a back and forth. It was unbelievable. Coxie with that incredible, a Beckham-like catch. I mean, it was what a great game that was. So hopefully fans in Montreal are going to certainly enjoy a high-quality game like that. Anything else that you like there, Pat? You're saying the Hamilton game? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I like that Hamilton game. I think that Winnipeg's in a spot now where they know they've got BC behind them. They know that they've only got a couple more wins to secure to lock up another first place. But there's always a little bit of juice when the Ticats and Bombers play, because we all know that it's not that far removed from a couple of Grey Cup showdowns, and Hamilton's gotten up to play in recent years against this Bombers team, and that's a Ticats team that's desperate too, and that's a Hamilton team that sees Montreal right in their crosshairs and an opportunity to move up the standings. So I think there's a potential for some real fireworks in that game too. And Winnipeg on the road in Hamilton, I don't think it's as look. I think Winnipeg's the better team. There's no doubt about it. But I think Hamilton plays them close this weekend, and that to me would be right there near the top as well.
Matt, the funny thing is, and we haven't talked a lot about them in this entire podcast, that, we've been talking about best teams and best running backs and, Red Blacks and Lions. You got this Lions team that are saying, hey, guys, what about us?
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of truth to that. It seems like they've had 6 buys this year already. It's just like we don't see them enough, right? And you talk about opportunities to play teams. Toronto and Winnipeg only play once, and Toronto and BC only play once. And to me, those are some amazing games to be, and just matchups. But yeah, I think the Lions, they'll take solace and they'll take that and use it as fuel. Nobody's talking about us. Rick Campbell's okay with that, and they'll use it as motivation, just like every other team will. But they feel like they've been cast aside and not given enough respect. But you earn that respect from week to week, and the BC Lions are certainly capable of getting everybody's attention because they're explosive. They've got great personnel. I think the defensive line is, the way they rotate. They've been decimated lately with a couple of injuries, but they continue to find ways to be competitive from week to week. And Bernard Adams is as explosive as they come in the Canadian Football League. And so, and it's not by choice that we've excluded them from this conversation. It's just that, we haven't talked about them. This football team has got all the parts, and it's just which one's going to show up that day. And I think their biggest hurdle to overcome is with any team, and you hear people talk about it all the time. If we just do what we do, if we just concentrate on what we do and be the team that we're capable of, we'll be fine. We don't care about what they're going to do. We just want to go out there and play. And when we play our game, we'll be fine. Okay, we get it. It's like, but but you still have to X and O and out coach, and I think that Ryan Phillips and I think that Jordan McSimic have been doing an outstanding job. What John Bowman's done with that defensive line is outstanding. They're as good as anybody in the league on any given day. It's just you got to be more consistent. And I think that's the only knock on that football team right now. But I think they're just as capable as Winnipeg or Toronto or anybody else to get it together and make a run at this and be in the Grey Cup in Hamilton.
Guys, it's a fantastic opinion and certainly just your conjecture, the fact that you guys know what you're talking about. I really, really appreciate it here, and we certainly do. And this is the CFL this week, but I know we're fans of football, right? Like we love football, whether it's youth sports, NFL, college, whatever. And Matt, I'm going to throw this to you because I'm sure maybe as a quarterback that played the game and had to deal with injuries and stuff that you maybe have some feelings on this. Well, I'd love your opinion on Aaron Rodgers and what we saw this week.
My opinion doesn't count, but I think his teammates' opinions do, and what they were saying and their emotional take on things after that football game. Obviously, a tremendous win in great fashion for that football team to dig down and get that home opening win in front of their fans, but devastated that they lost their leader and a guy that had made such an impact with them before the game even started. And I think that reflects highly on the type of caliber of athlete that they had and expected to have playing all season long. Much like we saw with Jeremiah Mazzoli in Ottawa. It's just devastating. And the team is going to continue to fight and try to win games like they did last night. But my take on it is it's bad for the league. It's a loss for the entire world of football. And I hated to see it. And I saw Peyton and Eli, and their reactions. And that was everybody's reaction across the world that was watching that game. It was like, no effing way did that just happen. Because you know how profoundly that will be felt across all levels of football and how it changes things. The guy's been dominant for almost 2 decades, and it was a devastating injury to watch. My condolences to Aaron Rodgers, his family, but, who knows? At 39, can he come back? Man, I had to do it at 33, and I was 100%. 6 months later, there's a guy that can do it. Aaron Rodgers is, but, boy, that was tough to watch, fellas.
Pat, four snaps. I mean, the hype all summer, the signing, the Aaron. I mean, even before he went to the Jets, the Aaron Rodgers watch. I mean, we watched that game. When he came out with that American flag, and Matt, I know you're American. Like, man, I had tingle. Like, it was crazy. And 4 plays. Like, it's sometimes football's mean business, man.
Yeah, and I mean it's and for it to be one of the more durable quarterbacks of the last couple decades too. Like, we don't see Aaron Rodgers get hurt very often, and for it to happen that way and to be so catastrophic. And I know Zach Wilson's a former first-round pick, and they looked at him for the longest time as maybe the quarterback of the future. But that one stung. It was bad for the league. There's no doubt about it. If I'm a Jets fan, I was happy to see Breece Hall come back and go for triple digits and look really strong out of the backfield. But especially knowing the injury he's coming off of. But yeah, it was just bad for the league for that to be the only game and for everybody's attention to be on it, and then for it to look as bad as it did, and then unfortunately be as bad as it looked. Yeah, that was really tough to watch.
Well, not to end on a downer, though, but you guys have been tremendous. Thank you so much for joining us on the CFL this week. As I said, your opinions, your expertise, always appreciated, not only by myself, but certainly by the people that watch this podcast on a weekly and, of course, yearly basis as well, too. And, folks, as we know you like to do, leave us that 5-star review. Let us know what you think about this podcast. We love the communication. We love the fact that you continue to come back week after week. Pat Steinburg, if people do want to throw something out to you, if they're a Stampeders fan or actually an Elks fan and aren't happy with you, where do they contact you?
Just on Twitter or X at Fan960 Steinberg. The Elks account found me real easy last week, so anytime you want. I love to talk about this league, and I love to go back and forth.
Matt, have you gone the route of your cohort, Dwayne Ford, and ignored social media?
Not so much ignored. I just don't reply. There's so much, it would take all day to get back to everybody. But yeah, I'm not that way. Schultz, he didn't even have a phone, God rest him. He called it his information machine. And, but I'm not a 40. I'm not a Schultz. I have it, at Matt Dunnigan TSN. It's where we at in this world, and it's a great way to communicate and get things off your chest, and I love it for that because everybody's got an opinion, everybody loves the game, and to me, it's just a great way to continue to share and talk about it.
Well, folks, once again, this is just one of the many shows we do have on the Ticats Audio Network, and Matt, I saw you with your old boys, Morielli and Hitch, and what a great show that was. Great memories and some funny stories, and it was great to see you. But that's just some of the shows that we do have on this network, folks. And we'll lead you up to the Ticats game, but we're also talking about the 3-down game and the CFL game that we all so much love. Again, Pat, Matt, thanks so much. Dave Campbell, whose internet fizzled, thank you again for joining us. This has been the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network. Thanks for joining us.